Welcome back to Mustache Moto. It's Ben, and today we're going to flush out the brakes. On my R1250 GSA, which we'll be working on today, BMW recommends you flush out and change the brake fluid at the end of your first year, and then every other year after that. Your bike may vary. It's worth looking up and checking. So why do you need to flush out and change the brake fluid? The bottom line is brake fluid is a hygroscopic fluid. That means it absorbs water out of the atmosphere. It absorbs moisture. And so over time, more and more moisture gets absorbed into the brake fluid. So that's bad for two reasons. One, theoretically, if it absorbs too much water under a lot of high constant braking, it could get so hot that water boils, and those bubbles would cause you to lose your braking capacity. I've never actually heard of that happening. Maybe it could happen in like a race type of scenario. So I don't think that's a big issue for 99% of us. But what is an issue is that water will degrade and could corrode the internals of your brake calipers and your master cylinder and your ABS pump. And I've seen master cylinders on old bikes that I've rebuilt that were all gummed up and corroded and nasty and shot, basically. So that's a really expensive thing you don't want to have happen. So especially if you're going to keep your bike for a long time, you want to keep on this and keep it changed every few years, every 2 years, so that you don't have an accumulation of water in there. A couple of ways you can do this. You can do it totally manually, and that's just by opening the valve as you depress the brake pedal or lever, and then you close it real quick, pump it up, do it again, do it again, do it again. And that works okay. It's a little tedious. And if you don't close the valve all the way before you release the pedal, you can suck some air back in to the system. And that is the thing you don't want to do. You don't want to get air in the system because that's spongy. It'll make your brakes spongy. You won't have braking efficiency. Your brakes will be horrible. You'll have to start bleeding it all over again. So unless you really do that a lot and you know what you're doing, I wouldn't go that route. A lot of people will get speed bleeders. These are replacement bleeding nipples that you put on the calipers. You take the current ones out, you put these in, and it's a one-way check valve, so when you loosen it, the fluid comes out, but nothing can come back in. Those are great. You need 3 different sizes for the BMW because each caliper has a different one. Thanks, Beamer. And it's just an expense and an added thing you don't need to do, and it's only good for that one bike, right? So what I'm going to use is this little check valve for bleeding your brakes off of Amazon for about $5. And it's the same thing as a speed bleeder. It only allows fluid out, nothing back in. But I just use it with tubing so I can move it around and use it on each of the brakes. Hose goes through a hole in a little water bottle, and then I put a wire on there so I can hook this on the bike while I'm working. This allows me to just kind of hook it up, and then I can pump the brakes without having to reach around and work the wrench on it too. And of course, a nice clear bottle so I can see if there's any gunk that comes out of it. So depending on your system, your braking system, this procedure could be a little bit different. If you don't have ABS, it's really easy. You just bleed each brake and you're done. With ABS, you usually have to actuate the pump because some fluid is stuck in that pump and doesn't come out unless the ABS gets kicked on. We're going to use a MotoScan app to do that. You could use the GS911. If you don't want to pay for either of those, I've heard you can also kind of skip that step and you go out and hit a gravel road and lock the brakes up. Well, not lock them up. Slam on the brakes so the ABS kicks in a couple of times and then you come back and bleed it out again. That's a little bit of a hassle. I'm going to do it with the MotoScan. First thing we're going to do is we're going to suck as much fluid out of the master cylinder for the rear brake as we can. Not all, we're going to leave just a little bit in there so that there's no air that gets in, but we want to remove the old stuff. That just means we have to push less through the system, and then we're going to refill it with new brake fluid. And let me mention, always use an unopened container of .4 brake fluid, or whatever your bike calls for. But if it's open, it could actually have already absorbed some water. So get a fresh bottle, and then you'll punch the seal open when you start doing it. Look, sealed. So how do you suck the extra out of here? You could use a syringe, a turkey baster. I'm going to use, because I've got it, little mighty vac that'll suck the water, suck it out and put it in here. So let's open this sucker up. Make sure everything's clean. I didn't mention that, but wash your bike. Make sure it's dry, so maybe wash it the day before. Make sure the calipers aren't crusty. There's no dirt. There's no gunk around there. They're not rusty. They're not messed up looking. And then continue. All right, so we're going to take the top off here. And there's a little gasket, a couple of parts. Okay. Get a paper towel here. And I'm going to put this in and suck it out. All right. And put that in here. And then I'm going to open up this fresh bottle of fluid and fill this up. Now be careful when you're using brake fluid because it will mess up your paint and other stuff. So I fill that all the way up. Close that. I'm going to go over here and open up the bleeder. Well, get that set up with the bottle first. Pull this cap off. It's just a little rubber cap that keeps the dirt from getting in the nipple. Let's see. Let's just make sure that this will loosen. It's 11 millimeter on this bike. Okay. I just barely moved it just to make sure I could. Put the hose on here. Be good and tight. Hang my bottle. Now I'm going to open this about a quarter turn. Okay. Now be careful because sometimes that hose will kind of want to rotate it back shut. Let's see. See, it's kind of doing that, so I'm going to turn the hose a little bit. There we go. Because when I pump the brake, it should be very easy to pump. So let me see. Let me reach over. Okay, nice and easy. I'm going to pump the brake. Should be going right through. Take a look. Yep, looking good. You might get a little dribble under here. I'm going to stuff a paper towel in just to be safe. And go back over here and pump all of this through. And you'll feel the brake will, instead of stopping the way it normally does and getting hard, it'll be a little resistance, but then it'll keep dropping. Keep pumping it. That's pushing the brake fluid all the way through. Now make sure you don't actually hit the bottom there. When you get close, we're going to refill it. Okay. Check everything looks good on this side. Yep, we are leaking a little bit down there around the threads, but that's okay. All right, give it a couple more pumps, but I think we're all the way through with clear, fresh brake fluid. All right, that's good. Come over here and close that nipple up. And there's no air bubbles in here, which is great. All right, that's nice and snug. All right, we get good solid fluid all the way through, and you can see the fluid that came out looks pretty good, nice and clear. It's a little yellower than the fresh stuff. All right, so that's the main flush. The next thing I need to do is actuate the ABS to pump some fluid out through there. I'm going to do that with my MotoScan utility. And I'm using the OBD Link LX. Plug that in. And turn the bike on. So the MotoScan utility only works with Android phones. I'm an Apple user, but I just went online, went on my Facebook page, and asked if anybody had an old Android they didn't need anymore and got a hand-me-down. It works great. So, here and see if you can see. I'm going to go R series. Going to find my R1250 GS Adventure, anti-lock brake system. Allow. Okay, it's actually connecting with the Bluetooth. Let's try that again. Opening connection. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to actuate the rear brake, and then I'm going to pump the brake push it down, hold it for 2 seconds, let it up, push it down, hold it for 2 seconds, let it up. I'm going to do that 3 times. Anti-lock brake system. There we go. Service functions. Bleed rear ABS. Continue. And it tells you what to do there. Perform the operation. And you hear it. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to go back and stop. Okay. Now we're going to flush the brakes again. And what this is doing is anything that's in the ABS system, in the ABS motor, is going to be pushed through now. All right, that little bit that was in there. Let's pump through the majority of the master cylinder. Okay, come back over here, close that up. You can still see in the tube there's no bubbles, which is what we want to see. None down here. Okay, I'm going to come back. And we're going to do it again. Perform the operation. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. I think it's going to stop itself. We'll just let it go. There we go. And I'm going to refill this because we're getting low. Close it up. I can actually turn this off now. I can turn the bike off. Come over here. Open the bleeder. Let's pump it through. Good, healthy one this time. All right, I'm going to come over here and close it. Okay. And I got some drippage out of the threads, but that's not a big deal. Get that cleaned up. Okay. The last thing I like to do, actually, before I take this off, I want to get the fluid out of the calipers. Okay? So what we're going to do, I'm going to open up this bleed, and then I'm going to push the caliper so that it forces the pistons in, and the fluid's going to come out right here when I do that. So I'm going to open that up. And then just by hand, I'm going to push this in all the way in. You can see the fluid coming through. And then I'm going to close it. All right. We are good to go here. Fully bled. Now keep in mind, since I just pushed those pads in, the caliper pistons in, right now the brakes aren't ready to actually use. I need to reset them, put them back, push them back in. So what I'm going to do is come up here, put some more fluid in here so we don't get it dry. I'll bring it up to the max. Then the first couple of pumps are going to be real loose as it pushes those pistons back in. Okay, nice and firm now. We fill them just to the max. That's perfect. Close this up. Clean that up, and then we're ready to move on to the front. Remember, I mentioned that the brake fluid is pretty caustic. It'll mess up your paint, especially your clear coat. So I'm going to show you a little trick on how to protect yourself up there. Cling wrap. All right. So I took off my mirror just so you get a better view here. But I'm going to take a bit of plastic wrap. All right. Let's cut a little hole. And then I'm going to stretch it over the master cylinder. Push it down to the bottom. So that gives me a little nice impermeable barrier. And then I'm going to put some rags, or I'm going to use paper towels around here to catch any spill that I might have. That way, if I get a little messy, we're protected. Very well protected. I was editing this video and I was starting to get bored because it was way too long and I like to keep these things short. So I'm figuring you might get bored too. Instead of making you watch me go through the whole front procedure, I'm just going to talk you through it because mechanically it's the same thing you did on the back. Here's the thing. Start with the left caliper, bleed it until you get it good and flushed out. Of course, make sure you keep the master cylinder full because you don't want to run out. When that's done, move to the right side and stay on the right side for a while. So bleed the right side, run the ABS program. Bleed the right side, run the ABS program. Bleed the right side, go back to the left and bleed it one more time for good measure. Make sure the master cylinder is topped up, close it, and you're done at the front. Got it all buttoned back up. Checked to make sure there's nothing leaking. Made sure all my bolts were tight. Took a feel. It feels nice and firm. Rear brake feels nice and firm. Time to drop it off the kickstand and find out. Off the center stand, I should say. All right, let's see. That seems fine. All right, let me suit up, get out on the road, and do a real quick test ride on it. Like I said, slow and easy the first time just to make sure everything's just right. All right, the last thing I like to do anytime I'm working my brakes is use a zip tie to really tighten them up. So when you finish up, what you can do is just put it on the brake, pull it in. It doesn't have to be super tight, but until it is pretty firm, put on the zip tie. Leave that there overnight. What that's going to do is really, really firm it up. It's kind of amazing how much this helps. And I don't really understand it. Little bubbles getting out of the system that you can't even see. I don't know. But be careful because this makes that front brake super duper duper firm. You can also do it with the rear brake. You can either hang something on the pedal or zip tie it down somehow. You'll be ready to go in the morning. Now get out there and ride.